Budgeting, we say that's a tool that assists you with the following. Helps you monitor expenses. And this is one thing. You are the people that are in charge of monitoring expenses, especially the overhead expenses. Performance measures and decision making. That last one's a good thing. If you guys don't give the people the information they need, how can you help in the decision-making process? So you got to give them the tools to do a good job out in the field. And we talk about this too. You should prepare an operating budget annually. You got to do it annually. Budget revenue and expenses by month, not just yearly, in order to monitor effectively. And we do have an example, I think, back there sometime. We'll show that when we get all done. Don't take the annual budget and divide by 12. Make sure that if there's certain expenses that you pay quarterly, put them in the budget that way. This really should be a working tool, because what we want to do is we want to get it down to where there's not a lot of variances. And if there's a variance, you guys will say, man, what happened here? So really you want to do that and take a look at it, because you want to be able to say, my operating expenses on a monthly basis are X. So then what you can do, you can say, okay, if my gross margin now is 22% and the market's getting tight, if I have to go down to 15%, can I sell that number of units, or can I get that sales revenue where I want it to be? Because I know in a lot of markets, the market's getting a little bit tighter. They got to take jobs a little bit tighter. So if they have this operating cost down, they can do a break-even analysis. And we're going to talk about break-even analysis. What I tell people to do with break-even is do your most optimistic, your realistic, and your pessimistic. And I say, if you can make money with your pessimistic break-even analysis, okay, you're doing pretty good. But you got to know your operating cost. And I don't think your operating cost should fluctuate from month to month to month. You guys have been around for a while. Do you really have much of a fluctuation in your monthly overhead cost? You shouldn't. You guys don't. I mean, really, you probably know what yours are, right? I mean, you guys know what they are. If I asked you, you'd probably tell me what they were, because you know what they are and you look at that. And if you have a variance, you're like, why do I have a variance? Right? As we said, prepare a realistic budget. The other thing we talked about, if times get tough, and let's say you do that overhead analysis and you only have 3 or 4 months worth of backlog to cover your overhead cost, that's why you have to know your fixed and variable cost, because you really can't cut your fixed cost. The only cost you can cut are your variable cost. So you got to say on our variable cost, is there anything we can cut? I know some people are like, we are down to the bare bones, we can't cut anything else. Well, then you got a real bad decision to make, because if you're that far down to bare bones and you're still not making money, you got to take a look at your business model. We also say, when you do your budget, I would do this because it's going to happen in 3 months, 6 months, 7 months down the road. You may have the owner come to you, and this is a fair statement. It's like, how did you make those assumptions? You can say, well, we expect revenue to increase by 20%. Why? Because we're expanding into new markets. We have new neighborhoods coming into play. Whatever that reason is. So at least put your assumptions down. Cost of revenue, expected increase, and direct proportion increase in revenue. Why? Because subcontractors are raising their prices, or we expect an increase in material prices. Windows are going to go up, or lumber is going to go up, whatever that is. So make sure that you have those written down. So if they ask you, why did you increase, you can say, well, when we sat down and talked about it, these areas we thought were going to go up, these areas we think are going to stay pretty stable. Sales and marketing, you can do this. I'm just making these examples up. You can say, we want to increase our marketing by 15% because we're going into a new market. I also have some people that are doing a lot more marketing because they're getting into new product. Are any of you guys getting into new product? I mean, the big area I'm hearing right now, I don't know if you guys are doing, is townhomes. That seems to be a hot area right now. Why is townhomes a hot area? You can get more per acre, right? Because the other thing that we talk about, and have you guys seen this, we are noticing that the price of land is increasing. The rule of thumb years ago used to be, out of 100% of construction, it used to be land cost was 21 to 22%. Then the cost of construction was 88, what would that be, 78, 79%. We are seeing that increase. You guys seeing land prices creeping? Anybody seeing that? That's what we're seeing more and more in the market. I heard some people it's 30, 35, 40%. So what you have to do is make sure you take that into consideration with your business model. Or I have some people say, you know what? It's going to increase next year because all those lots we bought back from the bank years ago when this other builder went out of business that we got really, really cheap, we're about ready to run out of them. because I know some guys that made some real good deals when that happened. And that's why you have a strong balance sheet, so when that happens, you can go and get some of those good deals. Then we say, G&A expenses, they're going to increase by 3%. Why? Because rate of inflation is going to go up for that, except for the following. We all have this, rent, we got a 5-year lease. Obviously, health insurance goes up for everybody. So just put this into your assumptions. So when your boss comes back and says to you, where did you come up with this overhead budget? You can say, here it is right here. And it makes sense. Or you can go back 6 months later and say, why did I increase this expense, or why did I decrease this expense? Because you're going to forget. I'm going to ask you guys, do you guys even remember what you did last week? See, that's the stuff. You don't remember that stuff, so what you want to do is write it down. And then what we say is review the budget to actual on a monthly basis, and we're going to go through an example. Investigate significant differences on a timely basis, positive and negative variances, and what's really important there is on a timely basis. I was actually with a client, and we're analyzing their cost, and it seemed like on certain items, they were not making the margin that they thought. Well, what they found out, the customer changed the way they reimbursed things, and that was to the detriment of this client we had. So they went back and they had to talk to the customer and say, wait, you can't do that. If they would have waited a year, that would have been way more devastating than what it was. So that's why we say right here, make sure you investigate these on a timely basis. And then, if you need to, revise your budget throughout the year, circumstances change. Let's say you thought, health insurance is going to be $5,000 a month. Well, maybe you got a big increase and now it's $8,000 a month. Well, go back and change your budget because you're going to have a variance every month. Unfortunately, that's a cost that you're going to have to deal with. And then we have other things, other budgeting techniques, projected cash flows, overrun by project. How many of you guys do a cash flow? Do you do a rolling cash flow, Dawn? How far rolling do you do it? How far out?
8 weeks.
Okay. I was going to say 90 days is about as far as I go because I don't know about you guys. You can't project much further. Do you guys do one too?
It's just 90 days.
Is it 90 days? You said you guys do one?
60.
60? Yeah. Who else? You guys, how far do you do yours? 90 days? For you guys who don't, I would highly suggest, and we're going to show an example of a cash flow, that you do a projected cash flow. And I'm with these folks over here. Going much past 90 days, that's a guess. Now, why 8 weeks versus 90 days? It just works out for you?
It's just the picture Bob wants to see.
Okay. All right, but that's okay. Now, how often do you guys adjust that? On a weekly basis or every 4 weeks or how often? Okay, do you do that too?
I adjust it sometimes even twice a week, yeah.
Oh, wow. Now, how often do you guys adjust that then?
Monthly.
Monthly. So you do 90 days, and then in another month you go out the next month as far as that goes.
Right.
Okay. You guys should all do that. You really should do a projected cash flow statement.